There's far too many definitions around. Believe me, if you get 3 analysts in a room, you've got 10 definitions. What we prefer to do is to use the one which the National Institute of Standards in Technology in the US came up with, and that is that there are 5 aspects to cloud which need to be there for it to be called a cloud. The first one is it has to be shared resources. Have to have this capability to share the servers, share the storage, share the network. But hey, that can be done through virtualization, and don't get the two mixed up. Virtualization is not necessarily cloud. It has to have global accessibility. There has to be the capability to connect into it from pretty much anywhere on the planet that there is internet connectivity. So if you just manage to share a load of workloads within your own private data center and keep it separated from everywhere else, so even your own employees can't come in through there, bring your own devices and so on, that is not necessarily cloud. It has to have high availability. And with the technologies that are built into the cloud environment, using virtualization, using things like OpenStack, you get a degree of high availability built into the platform anyway. There are always going to be issues. Those issues tend to be introduced more by the carbon-based entities, the people, than it is by the silicon-based entities, the technology. It's when something goes wrong, like with Microsoft and Azure, that they rolled out something which didn't actually work and hadn't got the plans in place to roll back rapidly enough. Has to have elasticity. By this it means that when a workload really wants more of any of the resources, that should be applied automatically. Again, it doesn't need the carbon-based life form, a sysadmin, to actually provide that resource through. And the one which I tend to argue with a little bit is that it should be self-service. Now, a lot of the end-user organisations I talk to say, over our dead body. We do not want our employees helping themselves to an SAP seat or something equally expensive. But if you roll it back a little bit, for you as the channel, you certainly want any cloud services that you are using to be self-service from your point of view. You don't want to be on the phone to any service provider that you're using saying, can we have some more of these resources? Can we have some more of these virtual machines? Can we have some more of these functions? For me, the NIST also say that there's 3 ways of providing this, which Neil's already touched on. You've got infrastructure as a service, which is the metal, platform as a service, which includes the operating system, in some cases the app server, and software as a service, which is the whole lot. You just buy the function. But then you've also got private cloud inside somebody's own data center or in a colo environment with their own kit, or renting kit off somebody else, but nobody else can use it. Then you've got the public cloud, the AWSs, the intermediates, the Microsoft Azures, the Googles, you name it, they're all over the place. Now, the private cloud is a difficult one. The largest companies on this planet will have somewhere around about 1,000 different workloads to 5,000 different workloads. They can just about do it. A lot of your customers will have workloads in the tens. And if they try to build their own private cloud, they can't actually have enough sharing going on. So if they try to architect that cloud for themselves, they're back to the bad old times of having to architect for all of these peaks of all of those different workloads. So if all of those workloads sort of go, okay, we now are going to need 3 times as much storage as we actually thought, we're going to have to put in a full fabric network with resiliency all over the place, and we're going to need 10 times as many servers as we thought, that is not a good cloud. What they're looking for is this scalability. If you've got thousands of customers with tens to hundreds of thousands of workloads, then you can architect for much higher levels of utilization on all of your resources. So you can be running at 80% or so, because you can borrow from other areas, because it's unlikely that all of those tens of thousands of workloads will all peak at the same time. What's the promise of cloud? A lot of this has already been gone through, the fully managed side of it, that you're working with better data security than most of your customers can manage internally themselves. They can't afford the people, the chief security officers who can understand all of this. You can have a solid service level agreement that actually means something for a change, rather than one where when it's broken, all you can do is slap somebody on the wrist and say, don't do it again. But the big one is time to capability. If you're the channel that has been putting in hardware for people, putting putting operating systems on it, putting app servers on it, and so on, that's a month, 2 months, 3 months of time from, oh, we've had an idea, going through all the purchasing, making sure you've got all the equipment in place, making sure that when it comes up, it's got all the right IP addresses and everything else is all set up correctly, and then going back over it again because you found a few errors. The service provider with a cloud has all of that already set up. If you want to function from them, for them it's a case of flicking a few switches and it's available to you. So you can now go to your customers and say, okay, you want something from the cloud, we can get it for you in the next day, 2 days, 3 days. And what we can then concentrate on is giving you that value that you need as a business to take it further. We can work with you on the processes, we can work with you on the things that really matter, that affect the bottom line. Whether we get an IP address right or wrong on a piece of kit that we bought in for you is actually not what your business is all about. So look at cloud and being able to give you all sorts of things around there, plus domain expertise. The people who are setting up clouds tend to be focused on a specific set of functions, a specific set of areas. So as well as areas like security, they will also have a deep understanding of these areas, and they can afford to bring in the skills to look after those areas, because they're sharing them amongst lots of different customers. But as Simon said, it's not all rosy, there are problems with it as well. And for you as the channel, I think the biggest one that you've all been worried about is disintermediation. This is where the cloud provider comes through and says, we love the channel, please, we'll give you a nice big hug. And then after the first year of a contract, we don't need you any longer because we've got the customers, so you can go and swing, we're happy, we've got the revenues coming through, thanks, goodbye for all the fish. Transition to the subscription model is also a real problem for you. You've got your sales force is used to selling a big deal and getting an amount of money in their pay packet the next month. Subscription may not work that way, and I'll go into this in more depth later on. And also, just where is the money? As you're running your channel businesses, as you're in the senior levels of it, you've got to look at this and sort of go, well, if we're not making a percentage on top of all of that kit, if we're not making time and materials of setting all of that up, just where are we making the money? And for a lot of the channel, we found that this has been a major problem. So, just where is it? Okay, well, if you look at an average organisation, and it really doesn't make any difference whether this is 20 people working out of an office somewhere or it's 200,000 working out of somewhere. All the research has continuously shown that your average organisation is spending 70% of its IT budget on keeping the lights on, doing patching, doing upgrades, replacing kit that's broken down, doing root cause analysis of errors. All of this stuff which adds nothing to the bottom line, and in a lot of cases, when they can't find the root cause, it's actually subtracting from the bottom line. So if you go for a cloud model, somebody else is doing all that patching, somebody else is doing all that upgrading, making sure that all the security is in place, making sure that high availability is being hit. So you're spending less time and less money on doing the setup for your customer. You're spending more time on solving that business's problems. And you're being able to focus on the process and the processes that the business is going through to bring in that money to make profit for themselves. You don't have to focus on the technology. Nobody cares whether this is a Xeon 69 terahertz CPU with 48 petabytes of cache. The business is never bothered about that. Speeds and feeds mean nothing to them. All they want is to know that this is something which will work, it'll work predictably, and they can keep on using it. So you can flick that 70%. You can now make it that your customer's IT budget, 70% of the IT budget is being spent on business investment, and only 30% on IT itself. And that is a major selling point on its own. But to do this, you're going to need to partner, because as small channel partners, you fall into this space that you probably don't have enough customers and enough workloads to build your own cloud environment and make it work properly. So you should be looking for the big guys who can give this scale, who can give you the domain expertise, who have all the skills in place. But a lot of this is nothing to do with the technology. It's a trust relationship. You're having to work with this partner on a day-to-day basis, every hour of the day. You don't want one which can only provide you with 8 hours support Monday to Friday. Your customers are working longer than that. You need ones who understand that and can work with you outside of office hours. You need ones where you're talking to somebody that you know. Account management is key. You don't want to be given an 0800 number and you phone up and you get, Jane today, John tomorrow, Dave the day after, an answer phone the day after that. You want to be able to phone up and say, I'm this channel, I am your customer, and I want to talk to my account manager whose name is this, who has been your account manager for the last 6 months, the last year, or whatever it is. Build that relationship up, they'll understand what you want, they'll be able to work with you and make sure that it works for both sides. You do need to understand what the platform is, what exactly is it capable of doing. If you go for a strange cloud platform that actually doesn't run Windows workloads, you've got a bit of a problem. A lot of your customers will have a lot of Windows workloads, and if you're having to run them through some strange form of emulation, you are not going to get a good user experience. So again, you need to understand that user experience. Sit down and try it out yourself. Don't just try it on the partner's site, because they've got a great environment for you to actually work in. Try it from your own site, try it through a mobile device, try it all over the place. Make sure that you're happy with the user experience, because if you're not happy with it, your customers won't be, and they'll blame you. They won't blame the cloud provider. Look at how integration is done. Any cloud provider that comes to you and says, oh, you don't need to interface with anybody else, we do absolutely everything, I will close the door, walk away from them and say, don't call us and we won't be calling you. What you're looking for is those who have good APIs, as Neil said. We're in the API economy. We need to be able to say, great, so you're picking something up from a public cloud environment. You may be picking that up free of charge, a best efforts environment, but how do we pick it up in the best possible way? We may be taking a stream from a cloud provider, something like a LexisNexis or a Dun & Bradstreet. How can we bring that in as a data feed so we can use that in our big data analysis environment? So the APIs are very, very key. How do they work? Are they simple enough for your skills to be able to utilize them? If they are more complex, has the partner got the capabilities to sit down with you and help you make use of them? Who's doing the billing and payment? Are you going to be in charge of billing all of these customers that you're signing up through an engine which you have very little control over? Or is the partner going to do all of this aggregation of small payments, all of this aggregation of needs, and make sure that the payment is made by the customer and that payments are made to you in a timely manner? You don't want to be sitting around waiting for 6 months for the money to come through. You've got a business to run, cash flow is key, so therefore make sure it's all happening. And as I say, it's all around trust, so make sure it's there. You all have your sales forces. And I might upset a few of you here because I would expect that some of you are in the sales side of the team. But sales forces tend to be coin operated. They're not particularly the most loyal members of staff that you have. If the best deal comes along, they'll probably go for it from one of your competitors. They're used to having a percentage of a deal stuck in their pocket the next month. And the deals are based on capital expenditure plus license and maintenance. So it's a case of if we've signed up a £100,000 deal, it tends to be £100,000 needs to be paid round about that first month, and then when it comes up after the first year, there'll be a maintenance charge of 18, 20, whatever percent, and they'll make some more money off that. Transitioning through to subscription, where it's a case of that £100,000 deal is now over 36 months. And so therefore there's only 1/36th of that being paid every month, and you'll only get a percentage of that 36th. It's something where most salespeople go, sorry, I'm not quite as green as I look. What's in it for me? There are ways to get around it. As you try to come across from that, the big deal to the subscription one, compensation will ramp up because you'll have 100 customers or 20 customers or whatever it may be, paying that subscription every month. And because it's repeatable revenue, then it should be, after a period of time, that the same or more money is going into that salesperson's pocket. But bridging the gap is the big problem. So on sales commissioning, license plus maintenance will increasingly become the exception rather than the norm. Loads of companies now are saying, no, we don't want this. We don't want to have, even if it's a perpetual license where once we've paid, we can keep on using it. When you look at the move through to things like Office 365, it's a case of, well, I've got continuous delivery here, I've got continuous improvement, and provided I keep on paying my subscription, I know I will always be on the latest version. I don't have to bother about doing all of the patching and all the rest of it. And it's the same here when you're looking at cloud. You're giving the people this capability to keep up to speed with everything. And if you went back 3 or 4 years, that could actually be a negative to a lot of your customers who go, don't change anything. We've just gone through loads of training, the help desk is just used to all of this. If you change it, it's going to be terrible for us. That mentality has gone in most organisations. They're all used now to their employees being consumers. They all have their iPads, their Android pads, whatever it might be. They're used to continuous delivery. They're used to change coming through on a regular basis. And provided it's small incremental change, they can deal with it. And the help desk needs to know less, because they are being that first level help around what does it mean to the business. How do I solve this business problem? Rather than second and third line help, who is now the cloud operator via yourselves. As I say, there's help required to bridge the gap and need for account management at the salesperson level. These salespeople now, if they choose to leave 6 months into a 3-year subscription, they brought in that deal. They're expecting that they'll get something out of that deal for that whole 3 years. But if you pay them the whole amount of that subscription, you're then going to have to pass that deal on to another salesperson who's going to go, well, if I'm managing it, I want something for it as well. And so you could end up actually losing out on the deal because you're paying 2 salespeople, one of whom doesn't even work for you any longer, for the same deal. You have to start thinking a little bit innovative around that whole environment. So the ideal is that as the big deal prices in green, the deals start to fall away, they are taken over by the subscription deals coming through, and hey, your sales guy, when they look at the addition between the two, end up with the same amount in their pocket every month. Unfortunately, it tends to be a little bit dirtier than that, and what you actually do get is that the big deals fall away faster than the subscriptions climb up. And so they end up with less in their pocket for a period of time until all the subscriptions have built up to a level where they go, wow, actually this works quite well for me. And you may have to look at how to get around some of these problems that there are in place. So top tips from Quocirca to you as a channel. Look at different compensation models. Figure out how to bridge this gap between the capital models and subscription. One of the things that you can do is looking at saying, okay, a lot of our customers are still looking at this as being a project, and therefore they have costed out the project, and therefore they have been to the board of their company or to the owner of their small company and said, this is how much it's going to cost. They've already allocated the money. And so you can sign them up for a 3-year deal and get them to pay 3 years in advance, or get them to pay a year in advance, followed by monthly after that. You can front load the deal. Most customers are open to that. It fits in with their model, it fits in with how they've allocated the money. So then if you've got a year's worth of subscription in your pocket, you can afford to pay the salesperson. So you can commission them based on a much larger pot. You don't have to be looking at dividing it by 12 or 36 all the way through. You need to harden up all your strategic vendor relationships. A lot of these at the moment can be quite weak. We see a lot of channel where it's a case of, we have all the flags on the door, we have all the tick boxes, and then somebody comes in and says, oh, I see that you're a platinum partner with this company. And the person that they're dealing with has been in the job for 3 weeks and go, I've never heard of that company, I wonder what they do. Try to, technical term, bullshit their way through it, and can lose you, the customer, because they really aren't part of this proper environment. So make sure that you understand what it is that all of your partners are offering to you as a business. Make sure that you know what you're offering them. Because it's a trusted relationship, you're not trying to take them for a walk, they're not trying to blindside you, they're not trying to make life difficult for you. Work together, make sure that you're listening to what your customers want, make sure you're providing them with what they actually need, not what you want to sell them. Slightly different for some channel where it's been a case of we only sell what the customer wants because it's a lot easier. As we're looking at cloud environments, it is new. Not a lot of companies have really moved into cloud yet, they're still dipping their toe into it. But if you want to maintain them as a long-term customer, now is the time for you to be sitting down with them and saying, this is what cloud means to you, and how can we move you from where you are to where you need to be. Part of that means you've got to understand what hybrid cloud is all about. Neil was talking about hybrid cloud. There are other nuances to it. A lot of the customers that you're dealing with will be sitting there with nothing virtualized, never mind nothing on cloud. And you're going to have to sit down with them and say, okay, vicariously, intuitively, quintessentially, what do you feel you are happiest with still staying on a almost physical environment, of one app per server or cluster? Great, we'll leave that there. We're not going to force you to move faster than you want. What is it that you feel can be moved into a more virtualized stroke cloud environment? Okay, there's a lot of workloads there. As Neil was saying, things like email are a great one to start with. Companies that are running something which is such a commodity service themselves do need a little bit of help these days. When email goes down because you're running it internally, your business can come to a pretty sharp halt, particularly if you've got things like sales@abc.com, and so you're no longer having orders coming in. And so sitting down with them and saying, great, so we can move this to the cloud, and we can move this outside of your organisation to the public cloud, where things can be so much better for you. But what should reside where, and also when? So, as I say, sitting down with them and saying, we accept that these are going to have to sit here for the moment. We can have a talk with you, we can come up with a roadmap and say, in 6 months' time, we would expect that these workloads will now be in a more virtualized environment in your own data center. They could be in a colo environment. In a year's time, we expect these to be being outsourced into the public cloud environment. And if things change, fine. We're not going to push things. We know that things can change. We know that you might have read a headline in Microscope which says that there was more security concerns, and you go, we trust our own security better than we trust the cloud security. We can all sit down with them and say, you're wrong, your own internal security is absolutely atrocious, doesn't tend to encourage them to work with you for too long, so you go, yes, fine, we'll move it in another 6 months' time or whatever. Looking at who you need to partner with to make sure on the hybrid cloud that it can all work together, so looking at what gives good integration services that enables everything to work together nice and closely. And who does the brokerage and the integration services for, around this cloud? So, are you going to do the brokerage? Are you going to sign all the contracts between yourselves and intermediate, yourselves and AWS, yourselves and Azure, bring all of those functions together and be responsible as the first and possibly second line anytime that anything goes wrong? Or are you going to be looking for a cloud provider who says, no, we can do all of that, we can do all that brokerage, and we can sit down with you and we can help you integrate through from all of our cloud services into the Azures and the AWSs, and you can still own the customer. You can still be first line support, but we can take all of that pain and high cost of second and third line support off you. You need to enhance your account management between yourselves and your customers, as well as making sure that the suppliers that you choose have got account management with you. Make sure that you really understand your customers. You do need to sit down with them and make sure that you become a strategic partner, not just a supplier. So you need to talk about futures. You need to come up with these roadmaps. Create a maturity model which you can stick all of your customers into. Know where they are. Are they so bedded? If you walk into their server room, is it full of Pentium Pro towers? It's unlikely that they're going to be moving to cloud in the next 6 months. If you go in there, is it a case that they've got Cisco UCS sitting there, or something like that? They're probably a little bit more forward thinking. Problem is they've probably invested too much money in that UCS to move rapidly over to cloud, but they're probably very open to the whole idea of having a roadmap that says, once you get to the end of that system's lifetime, then this is where you should be going. And there'll be all sorts of things in between there, people who've got badly engineered racks, rows which are being put together haphazardly as they try to grow through, who are in a position where they're saying, we have to review what we're doing. We're falling behind on the curve, we're not going where we need to be, we're not competing. So all business arguments, and you need to respond with business arguments to them of how moving some of their workloads over into the cloud environment will work for them and work for you as well. So lastly on the top tips, look to where the real money lies. It's not in TIC, it's not in operating system, it's not in having fairly clever grease monkeys going around installing a new server and putting an operating system on it and making sure the IP address is vaguely real. What you've got to be looking at, if you want to be a technology company, look beyond all of that to things like IT lifecycle management. At what point should a piece of IT equipment be replaced inside that organisation? What should it be replaced with? Is it the latest piece of IT equipment, or is it an outsourcing of the function that was on there to a cloud environment? Look to the advisory services. There is new technologies coming down the line. We need to sit down and talk to you about what this means to your business, how we can help you, at what speed should you be looking to go down this route. Look at offering them business type stuff. Yes, we can put in place a better security model for you. We can make sure that when your bring your own device users connect in through to the system, whether it's still in your own data center colo or fully clouded, that they're coming in a secure manner, which doesn't just mean using a VPN, but being able to put in place things like containerization on the devices. So that yes, they can take a laptop and they can go onto every single site in Russia. They can take an iPad and go all the way through every single Chinese site, pick up every virus and worm and keylogger and everything else that there is. But when they connect through to your business, to their own business, they're in a container. That container is totally secure. They can't cut and copy information out from that container onto the device. Nothing on that device can come through into that container and therefore into the center of the business.